I opened the door. My son was frozen solid, 3 feet from where I stood, hand reaching, still reaching. This is how I became the last person alive in Ashford. 237 people died that winter. I was 80 years old, a widow, cast out by my own son, and I survived, not because I was strong, not because I was lucky, because I listened to my dead husband's journals, to the earth beneath my feet, to the silence everyone else was too loud to hear. But survival has a price. My son froze outside my door. I heard him knock. I heard him beg, and I couldn't open it. This is that story. 8 months before that frozen hand, my son stood on my porch, told me I had 1 week to leave. Not a stranger, not the bank, my son. Garrett wore his mayor's suit, navy blue, pressed sharp enough to cut, the same suit he wore to his father's funeral 3 years ago. He wouldn't look at me. Oh, he said, formal, like I was a constituent. The council voted last night. This property has been designated for the new municipal center, eminent domain. We've arranged a room for you at Pinewood County Home. I stood in the doorway, 80 years old, 5'2", shrinking every year, but I didn't move aside. This is my home. It's town property now. Silas built this house. Finally, he looked at me, and I saw it. The thing he'd been carrying for 3 years. Rage, hot and tight behind his eyes. Don't, his voice dropped. Don't say his name. I'd known this was coming. Since the funeral. Since he stood at the grave and wouldn't let me touch him. Since he moved back to Ashford and ran for mayor on a platform of modernization. Since he stopped being my son and became the man who blamed me for his father's death. Garrett, you have 1 week. After that, the sheriff will escort you out. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. He turned, walked down my porch steps. The same steps Silas had built from reclaimed barnwood. The same steps where Garrett took his first solo steps as a toddler. Where he sat with his first broken heart at 16. He got into his truck. Town seal on the door. Mayor Vincent Garrett Thorne didn't look back. I stood there until the dust settled, until the sound of his engine faded down Main Street. Then I closed the door, locked it, and sat in Silas's chair by the window. The house was quiet. It had been quiet for 3 years. Since the morning I found him collapsed in the workshop. Since the ambulance. Since the doctor said massive coronary event like those words meant anything. Since the town found out about the missing $40,000 from the community fund. Since Silas's name became synonymous with thief. Except, 2 years later, they found the real embezzler, Gerald Hutchins, the assistant treasurer. He'd been skimming for 5 years, had a gambling problem, confessed when his wife threatened to leave. The town council issued a quiet statement. Accounting error. Mr. Thorne's name has been cleared. No apology. No memorial. No acknowledgement that they'd driven my husband into the ground with their suspicion and their whispers and their turned backs at the grocery store. Silas's heart gave out under the weight of their judgment. And Garrett, my son, my beautiful principled son, he blamed me because I should have defended Silas harder, should have fought louder, should have made them believe. Except I had, and no one listened. So when the town finally admitted their mistake, Garrett couldn't face his own anger at them. Easier to aim it at me, the one who was still alive, the one he could punish. I sat in that chair for 3 hours, watching the sun move across the floor. The same floor Silas and I had laid 40 years ago. Heart pine, golden, warm. Then I stood, walked to the bedroom, pulled down the cedar chest from the closet. Inside, Silas's journals, leather bound, 12 of them, one for each year of his retirement. He'd written in them every morning, coffee and sunrise and his thoughts on paper. I'd never opened them. Too painful, too final. But now I had nothing left to lose. I packed them in a canvas bag, added my gardening tools, seeds I'd saved, 2 wool blankets, Silas's work gloves. 1 week, that's what Garrett gave me. I left in 3 days. September 14th, dawn. I loaded everything into an old handcart, the kind with 2 wheels and a long handle, something Silas had built to haul firewood. The streets were empty. Ashford didn't wake early, never had. I walked past the general store, windows dark, past the diner where Silas and I had coffee every Sunday for 30 years, past the town hall where Garrett's office light was already on. He was watching. I knew it. Let him watch. I walked east, toward the ridge everyone called worthless. Ember Ridge, too steep for farming, too rocky for grazing, too exposed for building. The sun-scorched hill nobody wanted. Perfect. It took me 2 hours to reach the base. The handcart's wheels caught on every stone and root. My hands blistered, my back screamed. I kept walking. At the base of the ridge I stopped, looked back. Ashford was small from here. Neat, orderly, a grid of streets and painted houses and the white church steeple rising like a finger pointing at God. It looked peaceful. It looked like a lie. I turned my back on it, started climbing. The south-facing slope was everything I'd hoped. Gentle incline, full sun exposure, sheltered from the north wind by the ridge's spine. And something else. The soil. When I knelt and dug my fingers in it was dense, clay-rich under the dry crust, the kind of earth that holds its shape, that can be carved, molded, the kind of earth that remembers. I sat on that hillside for 3 days, just watching the sun arc from east to west, watching where shadows fell, watching how the wind moved. This is what Silas taught me. Before you build anything, you listen to the land. You ask it what it wants to be. On the 3rd day, I opened his journals. My hands shook. The first one was dated September 3rd, 15 years ago, right after he retired from the power company. His handwriting, slanted, confident. The sight of it broke something in me. But I read. Morning coffee tastes better when you've got nowhere to be. Marlowe sleeping late, rare. She works too hard. Always has. I worry about what happens when I'm gone. If this town turns on us, they will, eventually. People always turn on what they don't understand, what they fear. Been thinking about the old country, how my grandfather built his house, dug into the hillside, used the earth itself for walls, no lumber, no nails, just stone and clay and the wisdom of listening. If Marlowe ever needs to start over, she should remember. The earth holds steady, doesn't judge, doesn't betray, going to draw up some plans, just in case. I turned the page. There, sketches, cross-sections of an earth-sheltered home, detailed measurements, notes about thermal mass and solar angles and water catchment. 15 years ago, Silas knew. He knew what this town was, what it would do, and he left me a blueprint for survival. I sat there, journal open on my lap, and I cried. Not gentle tears, the ugly kind, the kind that come from your gut. 3 years of grief, 3 years of silence, 3 years of being blamed for not saving a man from a heart that simply gave out. I cried until I was empty. Then I wiped my face on my sleeve, stood, and started digging. The first cut into the earth was an act of faith. The shovel was old, Silas's, wood handle worn smooth, steel edge sharp because he always sharpened his tools after every use. I drove it into the ground. The sound, dull crack of crust breaking, Then the slip of blade into clay. I was 80 years old. My muscles were thin, my bones were brittle. Every medical chart said I should be slowing down, retiring, resting. I dug, one shovelful at a time. Lift, turn, dump, lift, turn, dump. My body protested, lower back seized, shoulders burned, hands blistered then bled. I didn't stop, because this wasn't about building a house. This was about refusing to disappear. Refusing to be put in a room at Pinewood County Home where they serve dinner at 4:30 and lights out is at 8 and someone checks if you've taken your pills like you can't be trusted with your own body. This was about staying visible, on my terms. By the end of the first day, I dug a trench, 2 feet deep, 10 feet long. My hands were wrapped in strips torn from an old shirt. My back felt like someone had taken a hammer to my spine. I slept on the ground that night, wrapped in one wool blanket. The stars overhead were sharp, cold, beautiful. I slept better than I had in 3 years. The hole was deeper, 4 feet down, wide enough to stand in. I'd separated the soil into piles, loose topsoil to one side, for future garden beds, dense clay to another, for mortar, gravel for drainage. Every shovelful was intentional. I worked in the morning, rested in the afternoon heat, worked again until the sun set. Ate from cans, drank from a canteen I filled at the town pump before dawn when no one was watching, and I read Silas's journals at night by flashlight. Year 3. Marlo asked why I'm drawing houses we'll never build. I told her it's like painting. You create something beautiful just to know you can. She kissed my forehead, said I was full of poetry and nonsense. She's right on both counts. Year 7. Bad winter coming. I can feel it in my bones. The old timers used to say, the earth talks to those who listen. I'm listening. It's saying, prepare. Year 11, Garrett visited. Tense. He thinks we should sell this house. Move somewhere easier. Easier for who? He wants us tucked away somewhere he doesn't have to think about us getting old. I won't do that to Marlo. This is her home, her roots. Silas had seen it all coming, not the specifics, but the shape of it, the inevitability. And he'd left me a map. End of week 3. The hole was 10 feet deep. I stood at the bottom, looked up. The walls around me were straight, packed earth, cool to the touch even in afternoon heat. This would be my home, my fortress, my final stand. I was scraping the floor level when I heard it. Footsteps. I froze, listened. Someone was climbing the ridge, young, light-footed. I climbed out of the hole, grabbed the shovel, not as a weapon, but it could be if needed. A figure crested the rise. Girl, 19 maybe, 20 at most, dark hair pulled back, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt too big for her frame. Backpack on her shoulders. She stopped when she saw me. We stared at each other. You're the woman, she said finally. The one they kicked out. And you're trespassing. On what land nobody owns. Fair point. She walked closer, looked into the hole I dug, whistled low. You're building an earth shelter. Not a question, a statement. How do you know that my grandmother, New Mexico, Pueblo, she grew up in an adobe house half buried in a mesa. Coolest place I ever slept. The girl circled the excavation. Studied it? Professional? Like she actually knew what she was looking at. You'll want the back wall against the ridgeline, she said. Maximum thermal mass. Front facing south for passive solar. You planning a greenhouse? I didn't answer. She looked at me. Direct, unflinching. I can help. I don't need help. Yeah, you do. You're what? 70 v 80. Jesus. Okay, 80. and you're digging a house by yourself, which is either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid or both. I'm going with both. Who are you? She held out her hand. Ren. Ren Calloway. I didn't take it. Why are you here? Because I've got nowhere else to be. Something in the way she said it. Flat, matter of fact, the voice of someone who'd learned not to expect shelter. You're running from something. Someone, foster system. They placed me in a group home in Ashford. Didn't take. I left. They'll be looking for you. Let them look. Ren dropped her backpack, pulled out a water bottle, took a long drink. I'm good with my hands, she said. I'm strong, I don't eat much, and I know how to keep my mouth shut. What do you want in return? To learn how to do this. Build something that doesn't need electricity or plumbing or permission from anyone. Something that just stands. I studied her, 19 years old and already tired, already running, already looking for solid ground. I knew that feeling. One day, I said, trial basis. If you cause problems, you leave. Ren grinned, first real expression I'd seen on her face. Deal. She jumped into the hole, picked up the spare shovel I'd been using to clear loose dirt, and started digging. Ren was strong, stronger than she looked. She worked for 4 hours straight, digging, hauling dirt, never complaining. We didn't talk much, just the occasional instruction. Pile the clay here. Watch for rocks. At sunset, she climbed out, stretched, looked at what we'd accomplished. 3 feet deeper, walls wider. What's the plan? She asked. For walls. Stone, mortared with clay. Roof, earth, sod, grass. Water, I'll find it. Ren nodded, pulled a granola bar from her pack, broke it in half, offered me one piece. I took it. We sat on the edge of the excavation, eating, watching the sun drop behind the western hills. Why'd they kick you out? Ren asked. My son is the mayor. He needed the land. Your son. Yes. That's. Wow. That's cold. He has his reasons. Good ones. I thought about that. About Silas. About blame. About grief that has nowhere to go, so it turns into anger. He thinks he does. Ren finished her half of the granola bar, crumpled the wrapper. My mom kicked me out when I was 15, so she said. Boyfriend didn't like having a kid around, so she chose him. Social services picked me up 3 days later. Been in the system ever since. I'm sorry. Don't be. I learned something. What? People will always choose easy over right. Always. But land. She slapped the ground beside her. Land doesn't choose, doesn't judge, just holds you up if you know how to stand on it. I looked at this girl, this 19-year-old who'd already learned the lesson it took me 80 years to accept. You can stay, I said, as long as you need. Ren met my eyes, nodded once. Thanks. She pulled a sleeping bag from her pack, rolled it out on the ground 20 feet from where I'd made my camp, close enough for safety, far enough for privacy. I liked her already. We fell into a rhythm. Mornings. We dug, extended the excavation another 15 feet, created the rectangular space that would become the main room. Afternoons. We gathered stones. There was a dry creek bed half a mile east, scattered with flat limestone and sandstone, perfect for walls. Ren could carry 2 at a time. I managed one. We made trip after trip, building stockpiles, evenings. I read Silas's journals aloud by firelight. Ren listened, asked questions. Year 9. Thermal mass is everything. Stone walls 2 feet thick will absorb heat all day, release it all night. The house becomes a battery. You're not fighting winter, you're storing summer. How thick are we going? Ren asked. 2 feet, like he said. That's a lot of stone. We have time. Do we? I looked at her. She was watching the sky, the way the clouds moved. What do you see? Winter coming early. My grandmother could read weather, taught me some. Those clouds, they're wrong for September. Too high, too fast. How early? November, maybe sooner. We had 6 weeks, maybe 7. Not enough time. Unless we worked faster. Ren and I hauled stones 12 hours a day. My hands were leather now, calloused thick. My back still hurt, but it was a familiar pain, muscle pain, the kind that meant you were building something. We laid the first course of the back wall, against the ridge itself, each stone carefully fitted, gaps filled with clay mortar. Wren had a good eye for it, could see how stones wanted to fit together, like puzzle pieces. My grandmother said stones talk to each other, she told me. You just have to listen to their conversation. Your grandmother sounds like Silas. Was he like that? Listen to things? Everything, the weather, the wood grain, the way water moved in a stream. He said the world is constantly teaching. Most people just don't pay attention. Wren pressed a stone into place, wiggled it, found the right angle. I would have liked him. He would have liked you. We worked in silence for a while. Then Wren said, Your son, does he know you're here? I assume so. Town's not that big. And he hasn't come. No. Is that better or worse? I considered that. Set down my trowel, wiped clay from my hands. Better. If he came, I'd have to decide whether to forgive him. This way, I don't have to decide anything. Do you want to forgive him? Did I? Garrett was my son. I'd carried him, raised him, watched him grow into a man who believed in rules and order and doing the right thing. But he'd also cast me out, blamed me for his father's death, refused to see that grief isn't something you can prevent, only survive. I don't know, I said finally. Ask me in spring. Wren nodded, went back to fitting stones. She didn't push. I appreciated that. The walls were rising, 3 feet high now, thick, solid, each stone locked into place by the weight of the ones above it. We worked without talking most days, just the sound of stone on stone, clay squelching, our breathing. It was peaceful, until the truck came. I heard it first, engine growling up the rough trail that led to Ember Ridge. Wren heard it too, looked at me. You expecting someone? No. We both stood, watched. A county sheriff's truck crested the rise, stopped 50 feet from our camp. Deputy Crawford got out. Young guy, mid-30s, decent enough. Had pulled me over once for a broken tail light. Gave me a warning instead of a ticket. He walked toward us, hands visible, non-threatening. Mrs. Thorne. Deputy, Mayor asked me to check on you, make sure you're okay. I'm fine. His eyes flicked to Wren, back to me. This is private land now. Town property. You can't be here. Town doesn't own this ridge, never has. Actually, they do now. Mayor filed acquisition papers last week. Ember Ridge is officially part of the municipal expansion plan. Of course he did. Of course Garrett made sure I couldn't even have this. We'll be gone by spring, I said. Crawford shifted, uncomfortable. Mrs. Thorne, it's September. Winter's coming. You can't survive out here. Please, let me drive you to Pinewood. Get you settled somewhere safe. This is somewhere safe. He looked at the half-built walls, the excavation, the pile of stones. This is a hole in the ground. It'll be a house. It'll be a grave. Wren stepped forward. She said she's fine. You going to arrest an 80-year-old woman for camping. Crawford's jaw tightened. You? You're the runaway from the Ashford group home. Was. I'm supposed to bring you in. Good luck with that. They stared at each other. Crawford looked at me, at Wren, at the work we'd done. Then he sighed. I'll tell the mayor you're okay, that you refused assistance. But when winter hits, don't expect a rescue. We don't have the resources. I'm not expecting anything. He nodded, walked back to his truck, paused with his hand on the door. My grandmother built houses like this in Nebraska during the Depression. She said they were warmer than anything the rich folks had in town. He got in, drove away. Ren and I stood there, watching dust settle. He'll be back, she said. I know. With social services, for me. Probably. Ren looked at the walls, the work we'd done, the work still ahead. I'm not leaving. They'll make you. They'll try. She picked up her trowel, went back to laying stones. I did the same. Social services came. Two workers, middle-aged women with clipboards and concern in their voices. They talked to Ren for 20 minutes, explained the group home had a bed for her, that she'd be safe, fed, warm. Ren listened, said nothing. Then they turned to me. Mrs. Thorne, you're harboring a minor. She's 19. She's a ward of the state until 21. You're interfering with her placement. I'm not interfering with anything. She's free to go whenever she wants. They looked at Ren. Do you want to come with us? Ren met my eyes. I saw the question there, the one she couldn't ask out loud. I gave the smallest nod. Ren turned to the social workers. No. If you don't come voluntarily, we'll have to get the sheriff involved. Then get him involved. They did. Crawford came back the next day with paperwork, court order. He looked miserable. Ren, I have to take you in. I'm sorry. Ren set down her shovel, wiped her hands on her jeans, looked at me. Thank you, she said, for teaching me. You're welcome. She walked to Crawford's truck, got in the back seat, didn't look back. I watched them drive away. Then I picked up Ren's shovel and kept building, alone again. I finished the walls by myself, 6 feet high now, thick, impenetrable. I'd used every stone we'd gathered and collected more. Trip after trip, my body screamed. I ignored it. The roof would come next, timber beams, then sod. But first, water. I started digging inside the excavation, looking for groundwater. Silas's journal said it would be here. The ridge was fed by an underground aquifer. You just had to know where to look. I dug. 3 feet down, still dry. 5 feet, 7. My arms were numb. My back was on fire. 9 feet, the shovel hit something solid. Concrete. I brushed away dirt, exposed a smooth surface. Poured. Professional. A seal. Someone had deliberately filled the spot with concrete. Recently. The edges were still sharp, clean. I sat back on my heels. There had been a well here, an old town well, abandoned decades ago. Someone sealed it, and I knew who. I climbed out of the excavation, walked to my camp, pulled out the county records I'd photocopied weeks ago at the library. Work Order 47B, cement pour, Ember Ridge, old well site, signed by Mayor Garrett Thorne. My son had sealed my water source. Deliberately, he wanted me to fail, to come crawling back, to prove I couldn't survive without the town, without him. I looked at that signature for a long time. Then I picked up my shovel and started digging beside the concrete plug, because if there was one thing Silas taught me, water always finds a way. You just have to follow it. 2 days later, I hit moisture, 10 feet down, just beside the concrete seal. The groundwater was flowing around the obstruction, like blood around a clot. I dug carefully, created a small sump, lined it with stones. Water seeped in, slow, clear, cold. I cupped it in my hands, drank. It tasted like victory, small, quiet, but mine. I sat there, hands wet, face dirty, 80 years old and digging wells in the ground like a pioneer. And I laughed because Garrett tried to control the water. But water doesn't care about your plans, it just flows. Around, under, through, always finds a way, just like me. End of week 8, early November now. The air had teeth, morning frost on the grass, my breath visible. The shelter was taking shape, walls complete, 6 feet high, 2 feet thick, stone and clay, solid as the ridge itself. I'd scavenged timber from a collapsed barn 5 miles south, hauled it piece by piece, old pine beams, still strong, laid them across the top of the walls, roofing structure, then layers of brush, sod, packed earth. The roof became part of the ridge, invisible from a distance. Inside, I built a raised bed along the south wall, filled it with the topsoil I'd saved, planted kale, chard, hardy greens that could handle low light, covered the south-facing opening with salvaged window frames, old glass, wavy, imperfect, but they'd let light in, and that was all I needed. The shelter was 15 by 20 feet, low ceiling, 7 feet at the peak, small. But it was mine. I stood inside that first night, lit a candle, watched shadows dance on stone walls. This was my home now, built with my hands, from earth and stone and the knowledge my husband left me. No one could take this. No one could evict me from something I'd carved from the ridge itself. I unrolled my sleeping bag on the packed earth floor, opened one of Silas's journals. Year 12, his last year of writing. His handwriting had changed. Shakier, thinner lines. My heart's been acting up. Doctor says it's nothing, but I know better. Bodies don't lie. If you're reading this, Marlowe, I'm gone. And you're probably alone. Garrett will have turned. The town will have turned. It's what they do. But you're not really alone. You have the earth, the sun, the skills I taught you, the strength you always had, but never believed in. Build the shelter. Live in it. Show them all that an old woman with nothing can survive what kills everyone else. Because you're not just surviving, Marlowe, you're teaching the world to listen. I love you, always did, always will, even from wherever I am now. S. I closed the journal, pressed it to my chest, and whispered to the darkness, I'm listening. Outside, the wind picked up. Winter was coming, but I was ready. No wren, no footsteps but mine, no voice asking questions or offering observations about stone placement or weather patterns. Just me, the ridge, the wind. I stood in the shelter, walls complete, roof beams laid, but still open to the sky in places, still vulnerable, still unfinished. And winter was coming fast. The fireplace. That's what I needed next, because thermal mass only works if you have supplemental heat for the coldest nights, the nights when even 2-foot stone walls can't hold enough warmth. I studied Silas's sketches. The fireplace had to be built into the west wall, stone, with a firebox deep enough for overnight burns, a throat to draw smoke, a chimney rising through the earth roof. Precision work, the kind that required 2 people. I had one, me. So, I'd figure it out. I sorted through my stone pile, looking for the flattest pieces, the most uniform. Building a fireplace isn't like building a wall. Every stone has to be exactly right, has to create a seal, has to withstand heat without cracking. I found 12 good stones, started laying the firebox, one stone at a time, testing each placement, adjusting, retesting. My hands shook, not from age, from the weight. These stones were heavy, dense limestone, each one 20, 30 pounds. I lifted them anyway. Because what else was I going to do? Give up. Go crawling back to Ashford and tell Garrett he was right. No. I'd die on this ridge before I gave him that satisfaction. So I lifted stones, and my back screamed. And I lifted more. 3 days to build the firebox, 3 days of positioning and repositioning and packing clay mortar into gaps so tight I had to use my fingers. My knuckles were raw, clay under my nails, in the creases of my palms. I'd stopped trying to clean them, but the firebox was done. Deep, solid, ready. Next, the throat, the narrowing passage where smoke funnels up, where the draw happens, too wide and heat escapes, too narrow and smoke backs up into the room. Silas's note said 8 inches. I measured, cut stones to fit, angled them inward. This was the part that could kill you if you got it wrong. Carbon monoxide, invisible, odorless, deadly. I thought about Silas, how he'd check and recheck every measurement, how he never trusted a single calculation, always verified twice. I verified 3 times because I didn't have the luxury of mistakes. The chimney was next, rising up through the earthen roof, a column of fitted stone, each piece locked into the one below. I built a scaffold from salvaged lumber, rickety, unstable, probably unsafe for an 80-year-old woman. I climbed it anyway, lifted stones, one at a time, up the ladder, onto the scaffold, into place. Each one was a small victory. Each one was proof I was still here, still capable, still refusing to be invisible. By the end of week 9, the chimney was complete, 10 feet tall, rising from the earth roof like a finger. I lit a test fire, small, just kindling, watched the smoke. It rose clean, straight up, no backdraft, no spillage into the room. The draw was perfect. I sat there, watching flames dance in my new fireplace, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride, not the loud kind, not the kind that needs an audience, the quiet kind, the kind that settles in your chest and says you did this, you built this with your own hands. At 80 years old, after being thrown away like trash, you built something that will stand. The indoor garden. I'd built the raised bed weeks ago, long planter along the south wall, 20 feet of growing space, filled with the topsoil I'd saved, rich, dark, full of life. Now I needed to plant. I had seeds, kale, chard, spinach, lettuce, hardy greens that could tolerate low light and cool temperatures. And I had Silas's notes about winter gardening. The key is light, not heat. Plants can handle cold if they have enough light. South-facing windows, low winter sun. It's enough. I planted in rows, careful spacing, labeled each section with small stones, watered from my spring. The water was cold, clear, perfect. Then I waited, because you can't rush seeds. You can only give them what they need, and trust. 4 days later, first sprouts, tiny, green, impossibly fragile. I knelt beside the bed, touched one with my fingertip. Life. In November, on a barren ridge, inside a home I'd carved from earth, I started crying again, which was becoming a habit. But these were different tears, not grief, not pain, wonder, because I'd forgotten that things could still grow, that new life could still push up through dirt. That hope was a seed that just needed the right conditions. I sat there for an hour, just watching them. These tiny green sprouts that didn't know they were supposed to be impossible. Week 10, day 4. I heard vehicles, multiple, coming up the ridge trail. I climbed out of the shelter, stood at the entrance. 3 trucks, town council. I recognized the mayor's vehicle. Garrett's, my son, coming to check on the crazy old woman. They parked 50 feet away, got out. Garrett. Council members, Howard and Patricia. Deputy Crawford. They walked toward me, slow, careful, like approaching a wild animal. Garrett stopped 10 feet from my shelter entrance. He looked older, tired, lines around his eyes I didn't remember. Good. Mother. Garrett. Silence. The other shifted, uncomfortable. We came to check on you, he said finally. Make sure you're alive. As you can see, I am. He looked at the shelter, the stone chimney, the earth-covered roof that blended into the ridge. What is this, my home? This is a hole in the ground. It's an earth-sheltered dwelling. Your father designed it. Something flickered across his face. Pain, quickly hidden. Dad never. He did. 15 years ago, drew up the plans, left them for me. In his journals, the ones you told me to throw away. Garrett's jaw tightened. Councilwoman Patricia stepped forward. Mrs. Thorne, please, be reasonable. Winter's coming. You can't survive out here. Can't I? You're 80 years old. I'm aware. Forgive me, but this is foolish. I smiled. Not a nice smile. Is it, or is it the sanest thing I've done in years? Councilman Howard, older, grandfatherly, tried a different approach. Marlowe, we're worried about you. We just want to help. Where was this concern 3 years ago when my husband's name was being dragged through the mud, when he died under the weight of your false accusations? Silence. Where was it 2 years ago when you found the real thief, when you quietly swept your mistake under the rug without apology? More silence. Where was it when my son decided I was too much trouble to keep around? Garrett flinched. Good. You don't get to be concerned now, I said. You don't get to salve your conscience by checking on me. I'm fine. Better than fine. And you can all go back to Ashford and forget I exist. I turned, started to walk back into the shelter. Mom, wait, I stopped. Didn't turn around. I'm sorry, Garrett said, voice rough, about all of it. No, you're not. I am. I didn't know how to. After dad died of shame and a broken heart because this town decided he was guilty without proof. After you decided it was my fault for not defending him loud enough. Silence. I turned to face him. You want to apologize, fine. Come spring. If I'm still alive, if this shelter stands through winter, then you can apologize, but not before. Why spring? Because that's when you'll know that everything you thought about progress and modernization and old ways being useless, all of it was wrong. I looked at all of them, the council, the deputy, my son. I'm going to survive this winter, in this hole in the ground, while you burn through your wood piles and fight your losing battle against the cold. And when I do, I want you to remember that an 80-year-old woman you threw away did what an entire town couldn't. I walked into my shelter, closed the door I'd built from salvaged wood, locked it, and listened to them leave. First snow, light, just flurries, dancing in the air like ash. But it was coming. I could feel it, in my bones, in the way the air tasted, sharp, metallic, the real winter, the killing kind, soon. I spent the week sealing every gap, every crack, every potential point where cold could seep in, packed clay mortar between stones, stuffed moss and dried grass into the space between door and frame, created a double layer of canvas over the windows, airspace between, insulation, small things, details, the kind that mean the difference between survival and hypothermia. And I tested the shelter, lit a fire in the fireplace, let it burn for hours, walked outside to check the chimney, no smoke except from the top, perfect seal, checked the temperature inside, rose to 65, held steady even after the fire died down. The stone walls were working, absorbing heat, storing it, releasing it slowly, exactly like Silas said they would. I checked the garden. The greens were growing, slowly, but growing. Kale reaching toward the weak November sun, chard spreading leaves, lettuce forming heads. Not much, but enough. Enough to supplement my stored food. Enough to give me fresh greens when everyone else would be eating canned vegetables and dried goods. I checked my water. The spring was flowing steady. I'd built a small catch basin, lined with stones, held about 5 gallons, enough for drinking, cooking, washing. I sat by my fire that night, ate a simple dinner, kale from my garden, rice from my stores, water from my spring, and I thought about the coming months, alone, on this ridge, in this shelter, with nothing but my thoughts and my memories and the ghost of my husband in journal pages. Was I ready for that, the isolation? The silence, yes, because I'd been alone for 3 years already. Since Silas died, since Garrett turned his back, since the town decided I was invisible. This was just more honest. Out here, the isolation was physical, visible, something I could prepare for. In Ashford, it was worse. Being alone in a crowd, being invisible while surrounded by people. That was the real loneliness. This was just weather, and I could handle weather. The snow came heavier, 3 inches, then 6, then a foot. Temperature dropped to 20 degrees, then 10. Inside the shelter, 52 degrees. Steady, no fire burning, just thermal mass, just the earth itself holding warmth. I watched the snow through my window. Thick flakes, silent, relentless, covering the ridge, covering my roof, adding another layer of insulation. This is what Silas predicted in year 7 of his journals. Snow on an earth roof isn't a problem, it's a gift. Each inch of snow adds R value. Insulation. By midwinter, you'll have 3 feet of snow above you, and inside it'll feel like autumn. He was right. The shelter was warm, comfortable. The fire I lit in the evenings was for cheer more than heat. My garden was thriving. The greens didn't care that it was snowing outside. They had light, water, protection from wind. They grew. And I harvested small amounts, a few leaves at a time, enough for salads, for soup, for the feeling of eating something alive. I was content, which felt strange, wrong almost. I should be miserable, lonely, desperate, but I wasn't. I was at peace for the first time since Silas died, because out here, there were no expectations, no one judging, no one waiting for me to fail so they could feel validated. Just me, the earth, the silence. It was enough. The snow stopped, briefly, a window of clear weather. I used it to gather firewood. There was deadfall all over the ridge, branches broken by early snow, whole trees toppled. I dragged them back to the shelter, one at a time, cut them to length with a handsaw. It took days. My body protested, loudly. 80-year-old joints don't appreciate hauling logs through snow. But I did it anyway, because I needed enough wood to last through January, February, maybe March if the winter was long. I stacked it inside the shelter, against the north wall, let it dry, and I gathered food, set snares for rabbits, caught 3, skinned them, dried the meat, dug for roots in the frozen ground, found wild onions, Jerusalem artichokes, burdock, not much, but something. I was preparing the way animals prepare, gathering, storing, making ready for the siege, and it felt right primal. Like something deep in my DNA remembered this, remembered being human before we had grocery stores and central heating, when survival meant reading the land, listening to the wind, preparing for what was coming. I was becoming something different out here. Not old, not weak, not invisible. Something older than that. Something that knew how to endure. I woke to complete silence. The kind of silence that means snow, heavy snow. I opened my door. 2 feet had fallen overnight. The world was white, smooth, unbroken except for my footprints from yesterday, and it was still falling, big flakes, slow, deliberate. This wasn't the storm, not yet, but it was the warning. I closed the door, lit a fire, made tea from wild mint I'd dried, sat by my garden, watched the greens grow, and waited. Because that's what you do when you're 80 years old and living in a hole in the ground on a ridge in Montana in December. You wait, you prepare, and you trust that the work you've done will be enough. The sky changed. I'd been watching it for days. The clouds, the way they moved, high, fast, coming from the north. Wren was right. Winter was coming early and hard. I did a final check. Food. 3 months worth if I was careful. Rice, beans, dried vegetables, smoked rabbit, and my garden, producing steadily. Water, the spring flowing strong, no sign of freezing. Firewood, stacked high, enough, barely, but enough. Shelter, wall solid, roof sealed, chimney drawing perfectly. That night, I opened Silas's Year 12 journal again, turned to the very last page, a page I hadn't read yet. P.S. from Marlowe. If you're reading this in winter, in the shelter I designed, know this: I'm proud of you, prouder than I ever was of anything in my life. You're the strongest person I've ever known. You just never believed it. Maybe now you do. Love always. S. I closed the journal, set it on the shelf I'd built from scrap wood, and I whispered to the darkness, I believe it now. The temperature dropped to 0, then -10, then -20, inside the shelter. 50 degrees, comfortable. I wore a sweater, wool socks, but I wasn't cold. The earth was holding me, keeping me warm, like Silas said it would. I spent the day tending my garden, harvesting kale, planting new seeds to replace what I'd picked. The cycle continuing, even in December, even in the deep cold, life persisting, because that's what life does. It persists, it finds a way, it grows, even when everything says it shouldn't. I heard wolves, far off, but getting closer, their howls echoing across the white landscape. Hunting. I checked my door, secure. They couldn't get in. But the sound, it was lonely, wild, ancient. I listened to them for hours, and I understood. We were the same, me and those wolves. Cast out, surviving on the margins, making it work with whatever we could find. No one would write stories about us. No one would celebrate our survival. But we'd be here when the soft ones were gone. The ones who couldn't adapt, couldn't endure, couldn't find a way. We'd still be here, howling, growing, persisting. December 15th, a visitor. I heard the truck, looked out. Crawford, the deputy. He parked, got out, walked to my door, knocked. I opened it. Mrs. Thorne. Deputy, storm's coming, big one. Radio says it'll hit in 3 days. They're evacuating outlying areas. I'm not evacuating. Ma'am, this isn't a request, it's mandatory. Then arrest me, he sighed. Looked at my shelter, the smoke from my chimney, the snow piled on my roof. You're really going to stay? I am. Why? Good question. Why was I staying? Why risk death in a blizzard just to prove a point? Except it wasn't about proving anything anymore. It was about this. This place, this shelter, this life I'd built, it was mine. And I wasn't leaving it. Because this is my home, I said finally, and I don't abandon my home. Crawford nodded, like he understood. Your son asked me to try one more time, to convince you. Tell him I said no. He's worried. He should have thought of that before he kicked me out. Crawford shifted, uncomfortable. For what it's worth, I think you'll make it. This shelter, it's solid. Better than half the houses in town. Thank you. My grandmother, the one who built in Nebraska, she always said the earth takes care of those who take care of the earth. Your grandmother was wise. He nodded, turned to leave, stopped. There's a girl, Wren Calloway. She asked me to give you something. He handed me a folded paper. I took it. He left. I closed the door, unfolded the paper. Wren's handwriting, messy, urgent. Mrs. Thorne. They placed me in Helena. Group home. It's fine. But I wanted to say thank you for teaching me that I don't have to accept what people say I am. I can build my own life, my own shelter. You showed me that. Stay warm. Stay alive. I want to see what you built when spring comes. I folded the paper, put it with Silas's journals, and I smiled because I'd taught her something. Not about building, not about earth shelters or thermal mass or stone fitting. Something more important, that you can choose who you are, how you live, what you build, no matter what anyone says, no matter how old you are or how alone or how impossible it seems. You can choose. And that choice, that's the foundation everything else stands on. The sky was the color of old bruises, purple, gray, heavy. The air tasted like metal. The storm was coming. I spent the day doing final checks. Food secured, water protected from freezing, firewood stacked and dry, door sealed, windows covered, chimney clear, everything ready. I lit a fire, made dinner, kale and rice and dried rabbit, ate slowly, savoring, and I sat, watching flames, listening to wind beginning to pick up outside, feeling the earth around me, solid, strong, holding. And I thought about Silas, about the journals, the plans, the knowledge he'd left me. He'd known this would happen, not the specifics, but the shape, that I'd need this, need him, need his wisdom, and he'd given it to me, across time, across death, because love doesn't end, it just changes form. From presence to memory to words on a page to stone walls that hold warmth. He was still protecting me, still keeping me safe, still loving me, just differently. Thank you, I whispered, to Silas, to the earth, to whatever force had brought me to this moment. Thank you. The wind howled. The storm was here. The blizzard didn't announce itself. It arrived, like a fist, like a wall, like the end of the world. I was sitting by my fire when the wind hit, not the gentle wind I'd heard for weeks. This was different, violent, alive. It screamed. That's the only word for it. The wind didn't blow, it screamed. A sound like rage, like fury, like every angry thing in the universe focused on this one ridge, this one night. The shelter shook, just slightly, just enough to feel. I stood, walked to the door, put my hand on it. Cold. The wood was cold, already, and the temperature outside. Dropping fast, I could feel it through the walls, through the earth itself. This was it. The storm Crawford warned about, the storm everyone said would kill me. I added wood to the fire, checked my water supply, my food. Everything was where it should be. The wind got louder, impossibly loud, a roar that filled the world, and the temperature falling, -20, -30, inside the shelter, 52 degrees, holding steady, the stone walls doing exactly what Silas designed them to do, holding warmth, blocking wind. I sat by the fire, tried to read, couldn't focus. The storm was too loud, too present, too everything. So I just sat and listened and waited. The storm hadn't stopped, hadn't even paused. Just endless wind, endless cold, endless white outside my windows. I couldn't see more than 5 feet, just snow, horizontal, driven by wind that felt personal, targeted, inside, still 50 degrees, still warm. My garden was fine. The greens didn't care about the apocalypse outside. They just kept growing. I harvested kale for breakfast, made tea, fed the fire, everything normal. Except nothing was normal, because I could hear it. Under the wind, under the roar, the sound of the world dying. I know that sounds dramatic, but that's what it sounded like. Like creation running backward, like everything that had been built was being unmade, and I was in my small pocket of warmth and life, watching it happen, powerless to stop it. Then, knocking, faint, almost lost in the storm, but there, someone at my door. I froze. No, no one should be out there. No one could survive out there. The knocking came again. Weaker, I moved to the door, hand shaking. Who is it? No answer, just wind. Then, a voice, barely audible. Mrs. Thorne, please. Wren. I threw the door open. She fell inward, literally fell, collapsed across the threshold, snow covered, blue lipped, shaking so hard her teeth rattled. I grabbed her, dragged her inside, slammed the door against the wind that tried to follow. Wren, what? How are you here? She couldn't answer, couldn't speak, just shook. I stripped off her wet clothes. They were frozen, stiff, ice crystals in the fabric. How long had she been walking? I wrapped her in blankets, all my blankets, pulled her close to the fire, her skin. God, her skin was white, waxy, the color of death, hypothermia, severe. I'd seen it before, years ago. A neighbor's kid fell through ice. Same look, same color. He survived, barely, but he was 12, healthy, strong. Wren was 19, thin, and she'd been walking through -40-degree wind. Stay with me, I said, rubbing her hands, her feet, trying to generate warmth. Wren, stay with me. Her eyes opened, barely. Ran, she whispered. From Helena. Couldn't let you be alone. You stupid girl. You stupid, brave, stupid girl. I made hot tea, sweet, added honey I'd been saving, held it to her lips. She drank, a little, but her hands, they weren't warming. They stayed white, cold, and her breathing, too shallow, too slow. I knew what this meant. I'd known from the moment I opened the door, but I didn't want to know. I kept trying, kept rubbing her hands, her arms, kept talking to her. You're going to be fine. You're going to make it. You're strong. You're so strong. Except she wasn't. Not strong enough for this. No one was. She died at sunset. If there was a sunset, I couldn't see it through the storm. But the light changed, got dimmer, and Wren stopped breathing. Just stopped. I was holding her, wrapped in every blanket I had, sitting by the fire, and she stopped. I kept holding her for a long time, maybe an hour, maybe more, just holding her. This girl I barely knew, this 19-year-old who had helped me dig, Who'd learn to read stone? Who'd run away from safety to make sure I wasn't alone? And now she was dead, in my arms, because I let her in. No, that's not, that's not fair. She died because she chose to come, because she was brave and stupid and kind, not because of me, except. If I hadn't been here, if I'd gone to Pinewood like Garrett wanted, Wren would be alive, in Helena, safe. This was my fault. Stop. No, it's not. She made her choice. But I laid her body on the floor, covered her with a blanket, and I sat there in the dim firelight with a dead girl 6 feet from me, and I thought about choice, about consequences, about the weight of decisions. I chose to build the shelter, to defy the town, to survive on my terms, and that choice, it led here, to this moment, to this death. Was it worth it? I didn't know. I still don't know. I couldn't bury Wren. The ground outside was frozen solid, under feet of snow, so I did what I could. Moved her body to the coolest corner of the shelter, away from the fire, covered her completely, said a prayer, not because I was religious, but because it felt necessary. Then I went back to surviving, fed the fire, ate breakfast, checked my garden. Normal things. While 6 feet away, a dead girl lay wrapped in blankets. Normal and insane, both at once. The storm was still raging. Day 3, no sign of stopping. And I started wondering, how long could this last? A week? 2, how much firewood did I have? How much food? I did the math. Firewood, 10 days, maybe 12 if I was careful. Food, 3 weeks, if I rationed hard. Garden, producing, but slowly, not enough to sustain me. I could make it, probably, unless the storm lasted a month, or unless something broke, a wall, the roof, the chimney, or unless I broke, mentally, sitting alone in a hole in the ground with a corpse. That could break a person. Stop it. You're fine. You're handling it. Am I then? Knocking again. I stared at the door. No, not again. Please, not again. The knocking continued, stronger than Wren's had been. A voice, male, muffled by wind. Mother, please. Garrett, my son. I stood, walked to the door, put my hand on it. Garrett, Mom, please, let me in. Martha's dead. The house collapsed. I'm freezing. Martha, his wife, dead, and he was out there, in -40, in wind that could kill in minutes. My son, I should open the door, should pull him in, save him. That's what mothers do, except my hand. It wouldn't move. My body, frozen, because I was seeing Wren, blue-lipped, shaking, dying, and I couldn't do that again. Couldn't watch another person die. Couldn't hold another body. Couldn't carry another death. Mom, please. I tried to move my hand, to turn the lock, to open the door. Nothing. My body wouldn't obey. Trauma, PTSD, whatever you want to call it. I was paralyzed, not physically, but mentally, emotionally. I couldn't open that door, even though I wanted to, even though I knew I should. I couldn't. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry. What? He couldn't hear me over the wind. Mom, open the door. I pressed my forehead against the wood, tears running down my face. I can't do this again. Mom, his voice, getting weaker, desperate. Please, I'm sorry for everything, for kicking you out, for blaming you, for all of it. Please. I stood there, hand on the door, unable to move, unable to save him. And I hated myself, hated the weakness, the trauma, the fear, but I still couldn't move. His knocking got quieter, then stopped. I waited, listening. Nothing but wind. Garrett, no answer. Garrett, still nothing. I slid down, sat with my back against the door, and I knew he was dead or dying right outside my door, and I'd let it happen. Not actively, not by choice, but by inability, by being too broken to open a door. Is there a difference between choosing not to save someone and being unable to? I don't know. I still don't know. The storm continued. Garrett's body was outside my door, somewhere, buried in snow. Renz was inside, in the corner, and I was, somewhere between them, neither alive nor dead, just existing. I went through the motions, fire, food, water, but I wasn't really there. I was thinking about Garrett, about the last thing he said. I'm sorry for everything. An apology. Finally. 3 years too late. And I couldn't even accept it. Couldn't even open the door to hear it properly because I was afraid. Weak, broken. I pulled out Silas's journals, read year 4 again. Marlo asked me today what I'd do if I had to choose between saving her or saving myself. I told her the truth. I'd choose her every time. She said that was stupid, that I should save myself. I told her love isn't about smart choices, it's about impossible ones. She kissed me, said I was full of poetry and nonsense. Maybe I am, but I mean it. I'd choose her every time. I closed the journal. Silas would have chosen me, even if it meant his death. And I couldn't even choose my son. Couldn't even open a door. Different people, different strengths. Silas was brave. I was. Something else. A survivor. And survivors don't always make the heroic choice. Sometimes they make the choice that keeps them breathing. Even if it's ugly. Even if it's shameful. Even if it haunts them forever. The storm broke. Not gradually. Just stopped. The wind died. The snow stopped falling. The air went still. I opened my door. Couldn't see anything. Just white. Wall of snow blocking my entrance. I'd been buried. The shelter had been completely covered. I started digging. With my hands. With a shovel. Carving a tunnel through packed snow. 3 feet. 5 feet. 8 feet. Finally. Light. I broke through. Climbed out. And stopped. The world. Gone. Everything. Buried. Snow 10 feet deep. 15 in the drifts. Nothing visible except the peaks of the tallest trees. And Ashford, down in the valley, I could just barely see the church steeple. And the town hall roof. Everything else, swallowed. The silence was complete. Not a bird, not a sound, not a breath of wind, just nothing. I stood there, on top of 10 feet of snow, 80 years old, alive. And I thought, I'm the only one who made it. Everyone else, under the snow, frozen, dead, including my son. I walked carefully, following the curve of the ridge to where my door had been. The snow was disturbed there, like something had been buried. I dug 3 feet down. I found him. Garrett frozen, half curled, hand reaching toward where the door would have been, reaching for me, for help, for forgiveness. I knelt in the snow, touched his face, cold, hard, gone. I'm sorry, I said. I wanted to, I tried to, I just couldn't. He didn't answer. Of course he didn't. I sat there, with my dead son, for an hour. Then I stood. There was nothing I could do. The ground was frozen solid. I couldn't bury him. I'd have to wait for spring. I climbed back into my shelter. Through the tunnel I dug. Back to warmth, safety, life. And I sat by my fire, alone, with 2 bodies, one inside, one out, and the knowledge that I'd survived. But at what cost? The days blurred together. I stayed in the shelter, ventured out only to check the sky, the temperature. It stayed cold, -20, -30. But inside, I was warm, fed, alive. My garden kept producing, slow but steady. I ate kale and rice, drank spring water, read Silas's journals over and over, and I waited for spring, for rescue, for judgment, all of it, none of it. The cold continued, but the snow stopped. Bright sun, blue sky, temperature slowly rising, 0 degrees, 10 above, 20. The thaw was coming. I could feel it, and with it, discovery. People would come, eventually, to see who survived. They'd find me, find Garrett, find Wren, and they'd want answers. Why didn't you save them? Why are you alive when they're dead? What kind of mother lets her son freeze outside her door? Good questions, all of them. I didn't have good answers. The snow started melting, slowly, then faster. Streams of water running down the ridge, pooling, draining. My shelter held, stayed dry, the earth roof shedding water perfectly, just like Silas designed. I could see more now. Through my windows, the valley, the ruins of Ashford, collapsed buildings, crushed roofs, nothing moving, no smoke from chimneys, no signs of life, just emptiness. I was truly alone, the last person alive in this entire valley. Maybe, probably, the weight of that, crushing. I was the survivor, the one who listened, who prepared, who built right, and everyone else dead. 237 people, including my son. Was I proud? Was I ashamed? Both. Neither. Just numb. Spring arrived. Real spring. Green pushing through dead grass. Birds returning. The world remembering how to live. I emerged from my shelter. For real this time. Not just peeking out. Walked down to Ashford. It took 3 hours. The snow was mostly gone, leaving behind destruction, houses flattened, roofs caved in, bodies, so many bodies, frozen where they fell, trying to reach shelter, trying to find warmth. They died in their homes, in the streets, in their cars. All of them. The town hall had survived. Partially, one wall standing, the rest collapsed. I walked through the streets, past the general store, the diner, the mayor's office, all silent, all empty, all graves. I found Martha, Garrett's wife, in the rubble of their house, crushed by a roof beam. I stood there, looking at her. She'd been kind to me. Once, before Silas died, before everything changed. I should feel something. Sadness, grief. I felt tired, just tired. I walked back to Ember Ridge, to my shelter, to Garrett's body still buried in snow outside my door, and I started digging. It took 2 days to dig graves. The ground was soft now, wet, easy to work. I dug 2 holes, side by side, on the south side of the ridge, where they'd get morning sun. Buried Wren first, wrapped in blankets, the best I could do. Said words, not prayers exactly, just acknowledgement. You were brave and kind, and you deserved better. I'm sorry. Then Garrett. I couldn't carry him. Too heavy. Had to drag him, wrapped in a tarp I'd found in Ashford, lowered him into the ground, looked at his face one last time. He looked peaceful, which seemed wrong. I wanted to save you, I said. I tried. My body, my mind. They wouldn't. I couldn't. Pause. I don't know if that makes it better or worse, but it's the truth. I filled the graves, marked them with stones, flat river rocks I'd collected, carved their names with a chisel. Wren Calloway, 19, Garrett Vincent Thorne, 52. Then I planted wildflower seeds on both graves, not because they'd appreciate it, but because I needed something alive, something growing to balance the death. April 15th, helicopters, federal disaster response, search and rescue, media. They landed in what used to be the town square. I watched from my ridge, didn't go down, let them find what they'd find. 2 days later, they found me. 3 people, 2 in uniforms, 1 with a camera. They climbed the ridge, stopped at my shelter entrance, stared. Ma'am, are you alive? Obviously. You survived the storm. Yes. How? I gestured to the shelter. This. They looked at it, at the stone walls, the earth roof, the chimney still standing. What is this, my home? The one with the camera, a woman, younger, started filming. Can we ask you some questions? You can ask. How many others survived? None. Just me. Silence. 237 people lived in Ashford, the uniform said. You're saying they're all dead? Yes. And you, an 80-year-old woman, survived alone in this? Yes. More silence. How? I looked at them. These young people with their warm coats and their helicopters and their disbelief. I listened, I said, to my husband, to the land, to the silence everyone else was too loud to hear. Will you come with us? We have medical facilities, food, shelter. I have shelter. Ma'am, the town is gone. There's nothing here. There's me. They looked at each other, unsure. You can't stay here. I can. I am. Winter will come again. It always does, and I'll be ready. The camera woman stepped forward. Can I interview you? People will want to know your story. Why? Because you survived. When no one else did, that matters. I thought about that, about Silas, about the journals, about earth sheltered homes and thermal mass, and listening to the land. Knowledge that died with an entire town, because they wouldn't listen. Fine, I said. You can interview me. But here, in my shelter, and you tell the truth. All of it. All of it. That I built this after being cast out by my own son. That the town called me crazy. That I heard my son freeze outside my door because I was too broken to save him. All of it. They shifted, uncomfortable. Are you sure you want that public? Yes. Because survival isn't clean, it isn't heroic. Sometimes it's just breathing when everyone else has stopped. The camera woman nodded. Okay, let's do this. The interview lasted 2 hours. I told them everything. The eviction, the building, the storm, Wren, Garrett, the choice I couldn't make. The camera woman cried, quietly, while I talked. When it was over, she said, "Thank you for your honesty. What good is surviving if you lie about the cost?" They left. Promised to send supplies, medical checks, support. I told them not to bother. I had everything I needed. The wildflowers bloomed. On Wren's grave, on Garrett's, purple, yellow, white, beautiful. I sat with them most mornings, the graves, talked to them, told Wren about the garden, how the kale was growing thick, how I'd planted new seeds, told Garrett about the shelter, how it survived, how Silas was right about everything, told them both. I'm sorry, and thank you. Sorry for not being who they needed. Thank you for showing me who I was. I turned 81, alone on Ember Ridge, with my earth shelter, my garden, my spring, the most content I'd been in years, maybe ever, because I wasn't proving anything anymore, wasn't fighting, wasn't trying to be seen. I was just living on my terms, in partnership with the land that held me. People came sometimes, journalists, researchers, curious strangers. I showed them the shelter, explained the principles, gave them Silas's journals to photograph, hoped someone would listen, hoped someone would learn. One morning in July, I woke to knocking, gentle, tentative. I opened the door. Wren. No, not Wren. A girl. 19, 20. Dark hair, backpack. Mrs. Thorne, yes. I'm. My name is River. I saw your interview about building earth shelters, about listening to the land, and I want to learn, if you'll teach me. I looked at her, this young woman, seeking knowledge, seeking a different way. I thought about Wren, about what I taught her, what she taught me, about how knowledge dies unless you pass it on. You'll work hard, I said. It's not easy. I know. You'll get dirty, hurt, exhausted. I don't care. And when winter comes, you'll leave, go somewhere safe. Why? Because I can't. I can't watch another person die. She nodded, understanding. Okay, I'll leave in November, but until then, teach me. I stepped aside, let her in, showed her the shelter, the garden, the graves, and I started teaching. Again. Because that's what survivors do. We pass it on to whoever's willing to listen, to whoever's ready to learn. The last ember, still burning,